Hunter Biden is back in the news because someone put a microphone in front of his face. And the only reason we're talking about him is because he is an imbecile. And he has, this fresh hot take on how his dad would essentially still be president. And he went on Jaime Harrison's podcast, who is a former DNC chair. And Jamie's like, I'm going to do a podcast because I'll talk to all sorts of people that no one else can get on their podcast. And I was thinking about it. If Hunter Biden was available, I would talk to him and I would ask him questions. I'm very curious about his worldview and his upbringing and his sense of entitlement and his crack use and how that might impair his cognitive function, which is something we don't talk a lot about, but maybe we should, because he's back in the news saying the only reason that Democrats lost is because people were disloyal to his father, as though his father, even though he was plagued by horrible polling, and I'm not just talking about people deciding who they were going to vote for in the 2024 presidential race, but the country, people felt like everything, 70% of them, 70% plus, consistently, one of the few consistent polls was the country is on the wrong track. And Hunter was like, the country was amazing. Like, it was the most successful presidency in the history of our nation with these phenomenal wins. So the only reason my dad had to get out of the race is because people were disloyal to him. And you should be loyal to the leader of the party. And anyone who looked at Joe Biden with a critical eye in 2020 knew that he didn't have all of his marbles back then. And I don't care what Joe Scarborough says about peak Biden. Even 2020 wasn't peak Biden. I met Joe Biden on a train platform in 2016, 2017, and he was a mess. Like, he was a mess back then. He was still vice president when I met him, surrounded by Secret Service, and the old Amtrak Joe was just riding the rails while Hunter was riding different rails, if you know what I mean. But we could all see that Joe Biden was impaired. And for those of us who were honestly calling his mental state as we saw it, we were saying this is not going to last 4 years. This is not going to age well. There is no way this is going to last 8 years. Anyone who has ever had a grandparent ever, even in bang up mental shape, knew that Joe Biden was on a very slippery downslope. But as long as he was in power and as long as people had access to power, they didn't care. They would prop him up. So Hunter Biden is now doing this interview, finger wagging and shaming Democrats for not coalescing around his dad. They had no choice. They hid it for a long time. And everything he did, and we're learning more and more as these books come out, and more will come out as more sources feel comfortable talking to authors after the first 3 or 4 have come out. The most successful, the highest profile book, of course, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's Original Sin, which went into pretty great detail because Alex Thompson from Axios was one of the few people really keeping score of how badly Biden was doing in real time. All the other cowards waited until he was pushed aside and his administration was kicked out of office and Trump was reelected before they wrote these books, which, it's like, if you're talking about a free press that's supposed to call truth to power, that's pretty cowardly. But what Hunter Biden is saying is his dad was a leader of the party. He wasn't. Obama showed at the end of Biden's presidency that he also was not the leader of the party because Obama knew well enough. Like, Obama may be the smartest guy in the room, but everyone at this point is openly just sick of him. And his professorial, condescending nonsense no longer plays because he has nothing to sell, especially millennials and Gen Zers in the Democrat Party. And he's also another person who is so quick to offer a lecture. Obama, he didn't want Kamala to be the nominee because he knew she was going to lose. If there's one thing Obama knew, it was what bad shape Joe Biden was in and how inept Kamala Harris was, not just as a person and not just as a communicator, but as a political operative of her own accord. She was someone who obviously could not put a good campaign team together. And this is something that she obviously should have been thinking about for 3.5 years before she was thrust onto the ticket. Obama knew that. And he didn't. He wanted the open primary. But, Joe Biden refused. He was very stubborn. So Hunter is now saying that everyone was disloyal and his dad was just fine. And you can't keep a secret in Washington. That's how we know that all these books are full of hot garbage, is you can't keep a secret in Washington. They really did their best. And if you read these books and if you read about the way this insular, I always have such a hard time pronouncing that word, this circle around him was crafted. So it was impervious to most people who would have access to and spend time with the president. And that includes his head of communications and people on the White House staff who serve every administration humbly. And they don't sell their stories. They are great, loyal public servants who will do whatever they can to serve and even protect the families that they have cared for generations. Those people were not allowed near Joe Biden. But by all accounts, people who have gone on record and very close anonymous sources, they have said that Hunter Biden was one of the people pulling the strings. And if that's the case, and if those dim bulbs were really running the country by committee, and they selected Hunter Biden to be the foreperson of that jury, that we have dodged an absolute bullet. I mean, that little committee was dumber than anyone could have imagined. Dumber than a cracked out Hunter Biden in his underwears, dropping his laptop and forgetting where he dropped it. It was such a poorly orchestrated, thinly veiled attempt to bamboozle the public into thinking that this stumbling vegetable was capable in any way of executive function.